The computer screen glowed in the dim light of my office, the email cursor blinking like a heartbeat. Outside, the November sky had turned the color of old steel, and the Indianapolis Motor Speedway stretched out below my window like a massive oval monument to speed and ambition. I'd worked 16 years to afford this view, built Caldwell Logistics from a single beaten-up freightliner into a fleet of 200 trucks. Now, at 38, I owned one of the most successful transportation companies in the Midwest. But none of that mattered as I read the laboratory results for the fifth time. Probability of paternity, 0%. Not unlikely. Not improbable. 0. Benjamin wasn't my son. I pushed back from my desk and walked to the window, pressing my forehead against the cool glass. 20 stories below, my trucks were pulling into the depot, drivers finishing their routes before the Thanksgiving holiday. Each truck represented a battle won, a contract secured, a competitor outmaneuvered. I understood that world. The world of business, of logistics, of moving freight from point A to point B efficiently and profitably. But this was uncharted territory. The doubt had been growing for months, maybe longer. Little things that seemed like nothing individually, but together formed a pattern I couldn't ignore. Benjamin had just turned 5 in May, and at his birthday party, Sarah's cousin had made an offhand comment. "Funny how genetics work, isn't it? He doesn't look anything like Robert." She'd laughed, slightly drunk on champagne, but the words had lodged in my brain like a splinter. I'd started watching him more carefully after that. The way he threw a ball, awkward and uncoordinated despite hours of practice in the backyard. His artistic abilities. The kid could draw detailed pictures at 5, while I could barely manage stick figures. His white blonde hair that Sarah claimed would darken with age but showed no signs of changing. His blue eyes, crystal clear like Sarah's, nothing like my dark brown ones. "Every kid looks like their dad somehow," Tyler's mom had said at soccer practice last week. "It's evolution or something. Nature's way of keeping fathers invested." She'd been making conversation, had no idea her words would send me spiraling, because I'd been looking, really looking, and I couldn't find myself anywhere in Benjamin's face. The tipping point had come Sunday night. Sarah had been at another symphony committee meeting. She'd been appointed co-chair of the annual benefit gala alongside Daniel Whitman, the pharmaceutical heir whose family name was on half the buildings at IUPUI. I'd been going through old photos, trying to create a slideshow for Thanksgiving dinner, when I'd found our wedding album. There was a photo of Sarah during our first dance, her hand resting on her stomach. At the time, I'd thought it was nerves, maybe the tight dress. But looking at it now, knowing Benjamin had arrived 2 weeks early just 7 months after our wedding, the gesture took on new meaning. I'd done the math over and over. Even if he'd been premature, the dates were suspicious. And he hadn't looked premature, 8 pounds, 4 ounces, perfectly developed. Monday after school, I'd taken him to Grader's, our favorite ice cream place in Broad Ripple. He'd ordered his usual chocolate chip cookie dough and a waffle cone, and chattered about kindergarten while I worked up the courage to do what I'd come to do. "Hey buddy, Daddy needs to play a special game," I'd said, pulling out the DNA test kit I'd bought online and had shipped to my office. Open wide, like when the doctor checks your throat. "Is this 'cause I've been coughing?" He'd opened his mouth trustingly, ice cream dripping down his chin. "Something like that." The swab had taken 3 seconds. 3 seconds to potentially destroy everything I thought I knew about my life. "All done. Good job. Do I get extra ice cream for being brave? You weren't scared at all." "Course not. You were here, Daddy. I'm never scared when you're here." The words had nearly broken me. I'd ordered him another scoop, mint chocolate chip, and watched him eat it while my stomach churned with self-loathing. What kind of father secretly tests his own son? But then again, what kind of mother lies about paternity? The test had cost $2,000 for rush processing, Results guaranteed by Wednesday. Today. I'd paid in cash, used a fake name, had the results sent to a private email account. Paranoid, maybe, but I'd needed to know without Sarah finding out. At least not until I'd processed it myself. Now I knew. And the knowledge sat in my chest like a block of ice. My phone buzzed on the desk. Sarah, texting from the salon. Just finished hair. Nails next. Want to look perfect for tomorrow. Your mom would have loved this style. Thinking of her today. XOXO. My mother. She'd died when I was 23. Cancer taking her just like it had taken everything else good in my early life. She'd never met Sarah, never met Benjamin. Sometimes I was grateful for that. She would have seen through Sarah immediately. Mom had a radar for lies that bordered on supernatural. People who lie about small things lie about big things, she used to say. And people who lie to others lie to themselves first. What lies had Sarah told herself to justify this? I pulled up our joint checking account on my computer. $600 at the salon yesterday. $400 the week before. 3 appointments in the last 10 days. Sarah had always been high maintenance. It was part of what had attracted me initially, that polished perfection that seemed so far from my blue-collar roots. But this was excessive even for her. Then there were the committee meetings, 3 times a week now, sometimes more. Always running late. Always at Daniel's penthouse because it was more convenient to the venue. Always coming home flushed and slightly breathless, claiming they'd been reviewing vendor contracts or arguing about seating charts. My desk phone rang. Martinez from Dispatch. Boss, we got a problem with the Chicago route. That construction on I-65 is backing everything up. We're looking at 3-hour delays minimum. Reroute through Lafayette, I said automatically. Take 52 to 47. It'll add miles, but save time. Roger that. You sound distracted, boss. Everything okay? Fine, just family stuff for tomorrow. Right, Thanksgiving. Enjoy it. Family's everything, you know? Yeah, I said. I know. I hung up and returned to the computer, pulling up my medical records. The vasectomy had been my secret, my shame. March 15th, 2022, I'd told Sarah I was going to Louisville to scout a potential acquisition. Instead, I'd driven to a clinic in Bloomington where no one would recognize me. The procedure had taken 30 minutes. Recovery had been 2 days in a hotel, ice packs and ibuprofen, telling Sarah over the phone that the negotiations were intense, that I'd be home soon. The decision had made sense at the time. Sarah's miscarriage 6 months earlier had nearly killed her. Placental abruption, massive hemorrhaging, emergency surgery. The doctors had saved her life but warned that another pregnancy could be fatal. She'd been devastated, had talked about trying again as soon as she was healed, about giving Benjamin a sibling. I couldn't risk losing her, so I'd taken the choice away without telling her. We'll discuss it when you're fully recovered, I'd said whenever she brought up another baby. Let's focus on Benjamin for now. She'd accepted that, seemed to move on. Started throwing herself into charity work, the symphony, the Arts Council. I'd been relieved, thought we'd dodged a bullet. Now I realized I'd been dodging the wrong bullets entirely. I downloaded all my medical records, the surgical notes, the follow-up tests showing 0 sperm count, the impossibility of fathering children after March 2022. Then I pulled up calendar archives, cross-referencing dates. Sarah's Girls' Weekend in April, her symposium in June, the emergency committee meeting in August that had lasted until 2 a.m. My phone rang. Brian, my brother-in-law, Sarah's brother, who'd become more of a brother to me than Sarah had ever been a real wife, apparently. Rob just landed at Indianapolis International. Ashley and the boys are excited about tomorrow. Mom's already started texting me about proper table settings. You know how she is. Patricia. My mother-in-law, who still looked at me like I was something she'd stepped in at the country club. Yeah, I know. You okay? You sound off. Long day! The Chicago expansion's been brutal. I hear that. But hey, you're killing it. Dad was just telling someone at the club about his successful son-in-law. Progress, right? Harold praising me. That was new. Only took 6 years of marriage and building a company worth $50 million. Listen, Brian continued. I wanted to give you a heads up. Sarah called Emma yesterday, said she has some kind of announcement tomorrow. Emma thinks she might be pregnant again. Wouldn't that be amazing? The ice in my chest expanded, spreading through my entire body. Amazing, yeah. Benjamin would love a sibling. Kid's been asking for a brother every Christmas, right? Right. Anyway, see you tomorrow. 6 sharp. God help us if we're late for Mom's schedule. I hung up and sat in the silence of my office. Sarah had an announcement. Of course she did. The salon visits, the nervous energy, the way she'd been extra affectionate lately after months of distance. She was pregnant, with someone else's child, and she was going to announce it at Thanksgiving dinner, in front of her entire family, expecting me to play the happy father. The rage that filled me then was pure and clean, like good whiskey. Not hot rage, cold, calculating. The kind that had helped me build this company from nothing. The kind that had gotten me through 2 tours in Afghanistan, through my father's death when I was 19, through every obstacle life had thrown at me. Sarah had made a critical error. She'd assumed I was stupid. That I'd never question, never doubt, never investigate. She'd looked at me, the high school graduate who'd started with 1 truck, who'd worked 18-hour days, who'd built something from nothing, and seen a meal ticket too naive to protect himself. She was about to learn differently. I picked up my phone and called Mitchell Barnes, the best divorce attorney in Indianapolis. We'd met through business dealings, and I knew he was ruthless when necessary. Mitchell, Robert Caldwell, I need to retain your services. Robert, what's going on? I'll explain tomorrow. Can you be on standby? I might need emergency filing. That's serious. My wife's been having an affair. She's pregnant with another man's child. And I just found out our son isn't mine either. Silence on the other end. Then, Jesus Christ, yeah, I'll be available. Document everything you can. Already started. Good. Robert, I'm sorry. Don't be. Just be ready. I hung up and stood, walking back to the window. The sun was setting now, painting the sky in shades of orange and red. Below, the last of my trucks were pulling in. My empire, still intact. My family, already destroyed. I just hadn't known it. The drive home took 45 minutes in Wednesday evening traffic. I stopped at Best Buy, bought a digital voice recorder small enough to fit in my jacket pocket. At the liquor store, I picked up a bottle of Macallan 18, Harold's favorite, the scotch he always commented on when he visited. You can tell a lot about a man by his liquor cabinet, Robert. Tomorrow, he'd learn exactly what kind of man his daughter had married and what kind of woman he'd raised. Our house sat on 2 acres in Carmel, a monument to suburban success. 5,000 square feet of colonial perfection, decorated by some designer Sarah had found in Chicago. Every room staged like a magazine spread, everything coordinated and complimentary. I'd signed every check without looking, happy to give Sarah what she wanted, proud I could afford it. The driveway curved through manicured landscaping that cost more to maintain monthly than most people paid in rent. Maria's Honda Civic was parked by the garage. Our nanny, though Sarah didn't work and Benjamin was in school full-time now. I have commitments, Sarah always said when I questioned the expense. The symphony doesn't run itself. Through the kitchen window, I could see Maria feeding Benjamin dinner. Mac and cheese from the look of it, the organic kind that cost $8 a box because Sarah insisted on everything being non-GMO, gluten-free, blessed by monks, whatever the current trend demanded. I sat in my car for a moment, watching my son, who wasn't my son, laugh at something Maria said. His face lit up when he laughed, his whole body involved in the joy of it. I'd taught him to ride a bike in this driveway, taught him to throw a football in the backyard, though he'd never quite gotten the hang of it. Read him stories every night until Sarah complained I was spoiling him. 5 years of memories, all of them tainted now. I walked through my front door for what I knew would be one of the last times as the owner of this house. "Daddy!" Benjamin ran to me, mac and cheese still on his face, and jumped into my arms. He smelled like crayons and playground dirt and little boy energy. "Hey, buddy, good day at school?" "We made turkey hands." Mine had 6 fingers cause I traced wrong, but Mrs. Patterson said it was creative. That's my boy, creative solutions to problems. What's a solution? It's like the answer to a question. Oh, like how mommy's always on the phone but says she's not? Kids, they see everything. Something like that. Hey, why don't you finish dinner and then you can play with those new Legos? The spaceship set we've been saving? His eyes went wide. Really? But mommy said not until after Thanksgiving. Well, I'm saying yes now, special treat. He hugged me tight around the neck. You're the best daddy ever. The words were a knife between my ribs. Maria looked at me with concern as Benjamin ran back to finish his dinner at superhuman speed. Everything okay, Mr. Caldwell? Can you stay late tonight? And actually, I thought quickly, can you take Benjamin to your place tomorrow? Just for the dinner. Bring him back around 8 for dessert. Her concern deepened. Of course, but there's going to be some family drama, adult stuff. I'd rather he not be there for it. I understand. Should I pack an overnight bag? Just in case? Maria was too smart, too observant. She'd probably noticed things I'd been blind to. That would be good, just in case. Sarah came home at 9:40, later than usual even for a committee meeting. She breezed in smelling like expensive perfume and something else. Wine, maybe, and beneath that, something masculine. Cologne, that wasn't mine. Sorry. She kicked off her heels, $1,000 Louboutins that she'd bought for the symphony gala last month. The meeting ran so late, we're finalizing the auction items and Daniel insisted on reviewing every single donation. Daniel. Even his name in her mouth made me want to break something. No problem. Benjamin's already in bed. Did he eat? Maria fed him. I should check on him. He's fine, Sarah. Sleeping. She paused, studied my face. Are you okay? You seem tense. Just work stuff. The Chicago routes are a nightmare. You work too hard. She came over, put her arms around me, pressed her body against mine. She felt different somehow. Or maybe that was just my imagination now that I knew she'd been in another man's bed. You should delegate more. Trust your people. Trust. There was that word. Hard to trust people with important things, I said, looking directly into her eyes. Something flickered there. Guilt? Fear? But then she smiled. That perfect Sarah smile that had charmed me 7 years ago. That's why I love you. You care so much about everything. I do. I really do care. That night, she initiated intimacy for the first time in 2 months. I participated mechanically, my mind cataloging every difference, every tell, the way she kept her eyes closed, never looking at me. The new things she did, things we'd never done before, probably learned from him. The way she called out at the end, was she thinking of me or Daniel? Afterward, she curled against me, her hand on my chest over my heart. Could she feel how it had turned to stone? Robert? Yeah? I love you. You know that, right? No matter what, I love you. No matter what. Interesting qualifier. Sure, Sarah. I mean it. These 7 years, they've been the best of my life. You gave me everything I ever wanted. Everything. She was quiet for a moment. A beautiful home, security, Benjamin. But not love, not faithfulness, not honesty. Sarah, is there something you want to tell me? She tensed slightly. Like what? I don't know. You've seemed different lately. Distracted. Happy. Is it wrong to be happy? Depends on what's making you happy. She sat up, looked at me in the dim light from the hallway. What's that supposed to mean? Nothing. Just an observation. She stared at me for a long moment, and I thought she might confess right then. But instead, she lay back down, turned away from me. Sometimes I think you create problems where there aren't any. And sometimes people create problems and hope no one notices. What's that supposed to mean? Nothing. Go to sleep. Big day tomorrow. She was quiet for so long I thought she'd fallen asleep. Then, barely audible. Yes, it is. I lay awake until 3 in the morning, planning. Sarah's breathing had evened out hours ago, deep and untroubled. How did she sleep so peacefully? How had she slept peacefully for years knowing what she knew? Finally, I gave up on sleep and slipped out of bed. Sarah didn't stir. I padded downstairs to my office, the one room the designer hadn't been allowed to touch. My sanctuary, with Dad's tools on the wall and my Army medals in a shadow box. The first truck's license plate hung next to my business degree from Indiana State, earned at night school while working full-time. In the bottom drawer of my desk, buried under tax returns and insurance papers, was our wedding album. June 15th, 2019. The Indianapolis Country Club, because Patricia had insisted and Harold was a member. 300 guests, most of whom I'd never seen again. The whole thing had cost more than my first year's revenue. I flipped through the photos. Sarah in her designer dress that had cost more than some people's cars. Me in a rented tux because buying seemed wasteful. Harold's speech about joining two great families, though his tone suggested it was more like a Fortune 500 company acquiring a small startup. There, the photo during the first dance. Sarah's hand on her stomach, protective. Her face turned away from the camera, looking at something or someone in the crowd. I'd never noticed before, but there was sadness in her expression, or was it regret? Our song had been At Last by Etta James. Sarah's choice. The lyrics felt like mockery now. At last my love has come along. My lonely days are over. But her lonely days hadn't been over, had they? She'd been pining for someone else even as we danced. I found our engagement photos next. September 2018, just 3 months after we'd met. A whirlwind romance, everyone had said. When you know, you know. But what had Sarah known? That she was pregnant? That Marcus had left her? That she needed a father for her baby and a bank account to maintain her lifestyle? The proposal had been at the Conrad Hotel's rooftop restaurant. I'd spent $10,000 on the ring, a sum that had seemed insane at the time but that Sarah's friends had deemed adequate. She'd cried when she said yes. I'd thought they were tears of joy. Now I wondered what they'd really been. I pulled out a legal pad and started writing. Timeline of events, evidence gathered, steps to take. By the time the sun came up, I had 3 pages of notes and a clear plan. Thanksgiving morning arrived gray and bitter cold. I made coffee and stood at the kitchen window watching frost melt on the grass. Benjamin would be up soon, excited about the parade and Grandma Patricia's cookies. Sarah would flutter around making sure everything was perfect. The elaborate dance of a family that was already dead but didn't know it yet. You're up early. Sarah appeared in her silk robe, hair mussed from sleep. Even disheveled, she was beautiful. It was almost painful to look at her, knowing what I knew. Couldn't sleep. Nervous about dinner? Don't be. Mom actually said something nice about you to her book club last week. What did she say? That you'd exceeded expectations. Exceeded expectations. Like I was a quarterly earnings report. High praise from Patricia. Sarah poured herself coffee, added the oat milk she'd switched to last month because Daniel was probably lactose intolerant or some such thing. I'm going to shower, then head to the salon. My appointment's at 9. Another appointment? It's Thanksgiving, Robert. I want to look nice for the photos. Emma always insists on family pictures, you know that. Right, the photos. She kissed my cheek, her lips cool and impersonal. You'll handle Benjamin this morning. Of course. You're the best. I wondered how many times she'd said those words, how many times I'd believed them, how many times she'd said them to Daniel after their afternoon meetings. While she showered, I made Benjamin breakfast. Pancakes shaped like turkeys, a tradition I'd started his first Thanksgiving eating solid food. He chattered about school, about his friend Tyler's new puppy, about whether the Lions would win today. Daddy, why don't I look like you? The question came out of nowhere, a bomb dropped between bites of pancake. I nearly dropped the spatula. What do you mean, buddy? Tyler said kids look like their dads. But I have yellow hair and you have brown hair. And my eyes are blue and yours are brown. And I'm short and you're tall. Well, you're 5. You'll grow. But Tyler looks just like his dad. And James looks like his dad. And even stupid Carson looks like his dad. We don't call people stupid, Benjamin. Carson calls me stupid. That doesn't make it okay. He considered this, chewing thoughtfully. But why don't I look like you? From the mouths of babes, as they say. Sometimes kids look more like their moms, I said carefully. You got mommy's pretty eyes and nice hair. Grandma Patricia says I look like Uncle Marcus. The spatula slipped from my hand, clattering on the floor. What? Mommy's friend from the pictures. Grandma showed me once. Said I had the same face. Marcus, Sarah's college boyfriend. Patricia had shown Benjamin pictures, had noticed the resemblance, which meant she knew, or suspected, and had said nothing. When did Grandma show you these pictures? I don't know, a long time ago. Mommy got mad. I'll bet she did. Benjamin, buddy, don't worry about who you look like, okay? You're perfect just the way you are. But I want to look like you. You're my daddy. The words broke something inside me. I know, buddy. I know. Sarah left for the salon at 8:30, a whirlwind of nervous energy. Back by noon to help with setup, she called, already halfway out the door. I spent the morning with Benjamin, playing Legos, watching the parade. Every moment felt like a goodbye. Every laugh, every hug, every, "Daddy, look at this," was a knife twisting deeper. At 11, Maria arrived to pick him up. You sure about this, Mr. Caldwell? I'm sure. There are things that need to be said that aren't for little ears. She studied my face, and I saw understanding dawn in her eyes. I'll take good care of him. I know you will. You always have. After they left, the house felt empty, hollow. I walked through each room, seeing it as if for the first time, or the last time. The formal living room we never used. The dining room where we'd host dinner parties for Sarah's friends. The kitchen where I'd taught Benjamin to crack eggs, getting shells everywhere while Sarah cringed. I set up the recorder in my jacket pocket, tested it twice. Then I went to the office and retrieved my briefcase with all the documents. Medical records, DNA results, bank statements showing the suspicious transactions. Everything I needed to prove what Sarah had done. The dining room table was already set with the wedding china, the Waterford crystal, the silver Sarah's grandmother had left her. Place cards in Sarah's perfect calligraphy, Harold at one end, me at the other, everyone else arranged by some complex social algorithm only Sarah understood. I tucked the briefcase into the sideboard, easily accessible but not obvious. Then I poured myself a scotch, just one, I needed to be sharp, and waited. Sarah returned at 12:30, glowing from her treatments. Hair perfect, nails perfect, makeup perfect. She looked like she was about to walk a red carpet, not serve turkey to her family. You look nice, I said, and meant it. She was beautiful. She'd always been beautiful. It was part of what made this hurt so much. Thanks. I want everything to be perfect tonight. I'm sure it will be memorable. She was already moving through the house, adjusting flowers, straightening pictures, fixing things that didn't need fixing. Where's Benjamin? Maria took him for a few hours, thought we could use some quiet time to set up. She stopped, turned to face me. You sent him away? On Thanksgiving? He'll be back for dessert. But I wanted... She trailed off, biting her lip. Wanted what? Nothing. It's fine. It's probably better, actually. Less chaos. Less chaos. If only she knew what was coming. The caterers arrived at 3, setting up warming stations in the kitchen. Sarah fluttered around them, making sure everything was exactly as she'd ordered. I watched her perform this elaborate dance of perfection and wondered who it was really for. Her parents? Daniel? Herself? By 5:15, everything was ready. The house smelled like turkey and rosemary, cinnamon and nutmeg. The lights were dimmed just right, candles flickering on every surface. Sarah had changed into a cream-colored dress that probably cost more than most people's monthly salary. She looked like a portrait of the perfect wife. The doorbell rang at exactly 5:30. Harold and Patricia, never a minute early or late. Robert! Harold shook my hand, his grip still trying to establish dominance after all these years. The house looks good. Sarah's work, I said. You know I don't have an eye for these things. No, Patricia said, air-kissing Sarah while somehow managing to look disapproving. You certainly don't, but we can't all have aesthetic sensibilities. Mom, Sarah warned quietly. What? I'm complimenting the house? Patricia was already moving through the space, her eyes cataloging every detail for later critique. Though I do think the flowers are a bit much. I think they're perfect, I said, just to be contrary. Patricia looked at me with surprise. I usually didn't engage with her passive-aggressive commentary. Well, she sniffed, I suppose everyone has their own taste. The doorbell rang again. Emma and David, right on time. David carried his worn Bible, the one he brought everywhere like a security blanket. Emma carried a casserole dish that would go untouched because Patricia would see it as an insult to the catered meal. Where's my nephew? Emma asked immediately, looking around. He'll be here later, Sarah said quickly. We thought it would be nice to have some adult time first. Emma frowned but didn't push. David was already eyeing the scotch with disapproval. He didn't drink, didn't approve of those who did, and made sure everyone knew it. Brian and Ashley arrived last with their 2 boys, 7 and 9, both in matching polo shirts and khakis. Brian gave me a bear hug, the kind that communicated genuine affection. Of all Sarah's family, he was the only one I'd miss. How's the civilian world treating you? He asked. Can't complain, though I bet you miss the structure sometimes. Every damn day, he laughed. But don't tell Ashley that. We gathered in the living room for drinks and appetizers. Harold held court about manufacturing challenges and Chinese competition. Patricia gossiped about someone's scandalous divorce at the country club. Just changed the locks while he was at work. Can you imagine? While Emma tried to steer toward safer topics. Sarah kept checking her phone, growing more agitated as time passed. 6 o'clock came and went, then 6:15. Finally, at 6:30, she stood. Let's move to the dining room. Everything's ready. We took our assigned seats. I sat at the head of the table feeling like a king about to be deposed. Sarah sat at the opposite end, fidgeting with her napkin. The empty chair for Benjamin seemed to mock us both. David insisted on saying grace, a long rambling prayer about gratitude and family bonds and God's mysterious ways. I kept my eyes open, watching Sarah. She was gripping her napkin so tight her knuckles were white. Whatever she'd planned, Benjamin's absence had thrown her off. The meal progressed with forced normalcy. Patricia dominated conversation with stories about the country club renovation. Harold pontificated about tariffs and trade wars. Brian told carefully edited stories from Camp Lejeune. Ashley wrangled their boys, who kept asking where their cousin was. He'll be here soon, Sarah said for the fifth time, her smile growing more strained. The turkey was perfect, the sides elaborate, the wine expensive. Everything staged for maximum impact. Sarah barely ate, pushing food around her plate like a child. I watched her, this woman I'd lived with for 7 years, and realized I didn't know her at all. Finally, during the main course, she couldn't wait anymore. She stood abruptly, tapping her water glass with her knife. The crystal rang out like a bell. "I have an announcement," she said, her voice slightly breathless. Everyone turned to her. Harold put down his fork. Patricia clasped her hands together. Emma leaned forward with anticipation. "Robert and I—" She paused, looked at me. There was something in her eyes. Fear? Regret? Or just performance? "We're having another baby. I'm 8 weeks pregnant." The room exploded. Patricia actually screamed with joy, a sound I'd never heard her make before. Harold stood to shake my hand, his face showing more approval than I'd seen in 7 years. Emma was crying, David quoting something about quivers full of arrows. Brian slapped my back hard enough to hurt. "This is wonderful," Patricia gushed. "Benjamin will have a sibling. When are you due?" "June," Sarah said, her color high with excitement. "Early June." "A summer baby," Emma clapped. "How perfect." I stood slowly, deliberately, and picked up my wine glass. The room gradually quieted, everyone waiting for my toast. "This is certainly surprising news," I said, my voice carrying the same tone I used when firing someone. "I have to say, I'm impressed by the miracle of it all." Sarah's smile flickered. Something in my tone had registered. "You see," I continued, walking toward the sideboard, "what makes this particularly miraculous?" I opened the drawer, pulled out my briefcase. "Is that I had a vasectomy 2 years ago." The silence was absolute. It was like I'd sucked all the air out of the room. Patricia's mouth hung open mid-laugh. Harold's hand was still extended for a handshake that would never come. Emma's tears stopped mid-fall. Brian's expression shifted from joy to confusion to something harder. I pulled out the medical records, began passing them around the table like I was distributing quarterly reports. March 15th, 2022. Performed by Dr. Richard Brennan at Indiana University Health. Follow-up testing confirms 0 sperm count. "Robert," Sarah's voice was barely a whisper. All color had drained from her face. "I can explain—" "Can you? Please, go ahead. Explain to everyone how you're pregnant with my child when I've been sterile for 2 years. Vasectomies can fail. Less than 1% chance after 2 years. But you're right, we should be thorough." I pulled out the second set of documents. So I had Benjamin tested. The sound Sarah made wasn't quite human. It was pain and fear and rage all mixed together. "Who's Benjamin?" Harold's voice was dangerous. "What do you mean, tested?" "DNA test. Performed Monday. Results received yesterday." I handed him the lab report. 0% probability of paternity. Benjamin is not my biological son." Patricia stood up so fast her chair fell backward. The crash was enormous in the silence. "This is a mistake," she said. "Some kind of terrible mistake." 5 years, I said, looking directly at Sarah. 5 years of lies. Were you pregnant when we met? Or did that come after? Sarah was shaking her head, tears streaming down her face. "Robert, please, not like this." "Then how? In private? Where you could manipulate me? Cry and make excuses? Number, your family deserves to know who you really are." "Is this true?" Harold roared, and everyone jumped. Sarah couldn't speak, just sobbed. Brian stood, his hands clenched into fists. "Sarah, answer him. Is Benjamin my nephew or not?" When she finally spoke, it was barely audible. "Marcus. Benjamin's father is Marcus." "Marcus Henley," Emma gasped. "Your college boyfriend?" Sarah nodded, unable to meet anyone's eyes. You were pregnant when you married Robert? Patricia's voice had gone cold, clinical. You tricked him? You've been lying to all of us for 7 years? I didn't mean... I found out after we started dating. Marcus had left, moved to Seattle. I was scared. I didn't know what to do. So you decided to defraud my brother-in-law? Brian's voice was lethal calm, his military bearing making him seem larger. You decided to steal 7 years of his life? I loved him, Sarah cried out. I did love Robert. I do love him. You love his bank account, I said. You love the life he could give you. The house, the cars, the country club membership. You love what I could provide. That's not... And this baby, I interrupted. Whose is it, Sarah? Since we've established it can't be mine. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Everyone held their breath. Sarah, Harold's voice was barely controlled. Whose baby are you carrying? When she spoke, it was so quiet we had to strain to hear. Daniel. Daniel Whitman, Patricia gasped. That pharmaceutical heir? The one from the symphony board? Sarah nodded. How long? I asked. 6 months. 6 months. All those committee meetings. All those late nights. While I was building my business, she was destroying our marriage. Harold stood up, pulled out his phone. I'm calling Stuart right now. Dad, what are you... Stuart is my attorney. As of this moment, you are no longer in my will. You are no longer my daughter. Daddy, please. Sarah started to follow him, but Brian blocked her path. Sit down, he commanded. You've done enough. David had been silent through all of this, but now he opened his Bible. The adulteress will be torn to pieces, says the Lord. David, stop, Emma said quietly, but she was staring at Sarah with horror. How could you? Ashley asked, gathering her boys closer. How could you do this to your family? Sarah looked around the table wildly. Emma, please, you understand. I understand that you've been lying to everyone who loves you, Emma said, tears flowing. I understand that you've destroyed everything. I pulled out my phone, called Mitchell Barnes. Mitchell, it's Robert Caldwell. I need you at my house immediately. Sarah watched with growing panic. Robert, we can work this out. No, we can't. I looked at Brian. You mentioned someone from JAG who does civilian work? Already texting him, Brian said. He'll see you tomorrow morning. Harold came back in, his face purple with rage. Stuart will have the paperwork drawn up by Monday. You're disinherited, Sarah. Completely. You can't just, I can and I will. No daughter of mine would do this. Patricia stood, gathering her purse. We're leaving. Sarah, don't contact us. Mom, please. But Patricia walked out without looking back. Harold followed, stopping only to shake my hand. Robert, you'll have my full support in the divorce. Whatever you need. Brian, we should go too, Ashley said quietly. You should go, Brian told Sarah. Pack a bag and go. This is my house. This is Robert's house, Brian corrected. You're just a guest who's overstayed her welcome. Sarah looked at Emma desperately. Emma, please, you're my sister. Emma stood slowly. I need time to process this. I can't look at you right now. But as she passed Sarah, she squeezed her shoulder briefly. Sarah didn't even notice, too lost in her panic. Within an hour, the house was empty except for Sarah, me, and Mitchell Barnes, who'd arrived in record time. We set up in my office while Sarah packed, her sobs echoing through the house. With the DNA evidence in the pregnancy, this is open and shut, Mitchell explained. We'll file emergency orders tomorrow. Freezing accounts, credit cards, establishing temporary support. She'll get the minimum required by law, nothing more. What about Benjamin? You have no biological claim, but you've been acting as his father for 5 years. That gives you some standing, though limited. We'll need to contact the biological father. Marcus Henley. We'll track him down. If he wants nothing to do with the child, which is likely, He can sign away his rights. And Daniel Whitman? He'll be on the hook for child support if the baby is his. But given his family's resources, expect a fight. We worked until midnight, documenting everything, preparing filing, creating inventories. Through it all, Sarah's crying provided a soundtrack to the destruction of our marriage. Finally, Emma returned, against David's wishes from the sound of the argument they had in the driveway. "I'm staying with her tonight," she told me. "Someone has to." She made her choices. Yes, she did. And she'll face the consequences. But she's pregnant and alone. She should have thought of that before. Emma looked at me sadly. "You're right to be angry. What she did was unforgivable. But anger will eat you alive if you let it. I'll take my chances." The next morning, Black Friday, Mitchell filed the papers at 8 a.m. By noon, Sarah's cards were canceled, the accounts frozen. She had her car, her personal belongings, and 1 month of temporary support, the legal minimum. Daniel Whitman's response came through his lawyers that afternoon. He acknowledged the affair but disputed paternity, demanding testing when the baby was born. His wife, from whom he'd been separated, had suddenly reconciled with him. They were renewing their vows next month. The Whitman family machine was protecting their own. Marcus Henley was contacted that evening. His response was swift and legal: complete termination of parental rights in exchange for no financial obligation. His wife filed for divorce within hours of learning about Benjamin. Sarah moved into a 2-bedroom apartment the following week. Not a bad place, but a far cry from our Carmel mansion. Emma helped her move, despite Harold's threats to cut her off too. Benjamin stayed with Sarah, of course. I had no legal right to him. But I sent money anyway through my lawyer for his needs. He didn't ask to be born into this mess. Christmas came and went. I sent Benjamin presents through Maria: a new bike, Legos, all the books I would have read to him. Sarah sent me a card, just signed Sarah and Benjamin. I threw it away unopened. The divorce proceeded with ruthless efficiency. Indiana's adultery laws were clear, the evidence overwhelming. Sarah's attorney tried to argue for more support, but the pregnancy with another man's child undermined any sympathy. In February, she gave birth to a daughter, Claire. Daniel Whitman's paternity was confirmed. He paid support, generously by legal standards, but wanted no contact with the child. By March, 4 months from that Thanksgiving dinner, the divorce was final. I kept most of our assets, the business, the investments. Sarah got her car, personal items, and a year of minimal alimony. The house sold quickly, the proceeds mostly mine. I bought a downtown condo, all glass and steel and modern lines. Nothing like the warm colonial Sarah had created. I threw myself into work with renewed intensity. The Chicago expansion succeeded beyond projections. We opened routes to Detroit, Milwaukee, St. Louis. Caldwell Logistics became a regional powerhouse, valued at over $100 million within 2 years. But success felt hollow. There was no one to share it with, no one to celebrate with. No little voice calling daddy when I came home. I started dating Margaret that fall, almost a year after the divorce. She was a federal prosecutor, brilliant and driven. She understood long hours and dedication. She didn't want children, which was perfect since I couldn't give them to her and wouldn't go through adoption or fertility treatments. Not after everything, but I couldn't trust her. I checked her phone when she showered, had a private investigator verify her background, tracked her location, questioned every inconsistency. "You're exhausting," she told me after 6 months. "I feel like I'm constantly under investigation. I'm working on it. Are you? Because from where I sit, you're letting your ex-wife continue to control your life." She was right. Sarah was gone, but her ghost remained, poisoning every interaction. "Get therapy or lose me," Margaret said finally. "I won't be punished for another woman's sins." So I started therapy. Twice weekly sessions, sometimes more. Unpacking not just Sarah's betrayal, but everything. My father's death, my mother's cancer, the army years, the relentless drive to succeed. You married someone who needed what you could provide, my therapist observed. But you needed something too, to be needed. Slowly, painfully, I began to rebuild. Not trust exactly, but the possibility of trust. 2.5 years after the divorce, Maria called. Benjamin's school play is next week. He specifically asked if you'd come. He said, "Tell Daddy I'm a really good tree." I sat in the back of the auditorium, Margaret beside me. Sarah was in the third row with Claire on her lap, Emma next to her. Sarah had aged, lines around her eyes, gray in her hair. The polished perfection was gone. Benjamin appeared on stage in his tree costume, scanning the audience. When he spotted me, his whole face lit up. He waved frantically until the teacher reminded him that trees don't wave. After the play, he ran to me. "Daddy, did you see?" "I saw, buddy. You were the best tree up there." Trees don't have lines, but I didn't forget not to have them. 7.5-year-old logic. Still perfect. Sarah approached hesitantly. "Thank you for coming." "He asked me to." "I know, he misses you." "I miss him too." We stood there awkwardly, this woman I'd loved and the child I still loved but couldn't claim. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. "I know it doesn't matter now, but I'm sorry. Every day." "It doesn't change anything." "I know, but I needed to say it." Margaret touched my arm gently. "We should go." Sarah noticed her then, something flickering across her face. "You look happy." "I'm working on it." Benjamin hugged me goodbye, fierce and tight. "Will you come to my baseball games?" "We'll see, buddy." 3 years now since that Thanksgiving dinner. Caldwell Logistics is worth $200 million. I'm successful beyond my father's wildest dreams. Margaret and I are in couples therapy, working through my trust issues. Some days are better than others. Sarah still lives in the same apartment, still works at the medical billing company, promoted to supervisor now. Emma visits monthly, the only family she has left. Harold died last year, never having forgiven her. Patricia lives but won't acknowledge Sarah's existence. Daniel Whitman is a state senator now, eyeing a congressional run. His renewed marriage featured in society magazines. Claire will grow up knowing her father only as a monthly check. And me? I survive. I succeed. I try to trust again, even when every instinct screams against it. Because the alternative is letting Sarah's betrayal define not just my past but my future. Some victories, I've learned, leave you more alone than defeat ever could, but you keep going anyway, because that's what survivors do.